Parts of the Lee Valley around Ballincollig were noted as being an area of scientific interest in the mid-1980s. This was particularly for the range of plants found here, but also for bird life and other animal life. For these reasons, and because of the range of habitats found here, it was proposed as a natural heritage area in the mid-1990s. These habitats include drier woodlands, as well as wetter woodland areas, strips of freshwater marsh fringing the river, and grasslands. The Lee Valley Proposed Natural Heritage Area, or PNHA, is made up of 5 sites, and these spread from just below the Inniscarra Dam in the west to just before the County Hall in the east. 2 of these sites are located within the current Ballincollig development boundary, and one of those is inside the Ballincollig Regional Park. Now, because it is only a proposed natural heritage area, the Lee Valley PNHA doesn't have the same protection as designated nature conservation sites. But most local authorities do protect them, for example, in development plans and in the planning process generally. If you want to find out more about the PNHA, you can go to the website of the National Parks and Wildlife Service, npws.ie. If you click on Protected Sites, that will take you to a page where all the different types of nature protected sites in Ireland are listed. If you choose Natural Heritage Areas, it will bring you to a page with a map of all the natural heritage areas in Ireland. Scroll down the page and you'll find a link to where you can download information on proposed natural heritage areas. Once you've downloaded the file and open it, you need to scroll down to site number 000094, the Lee Valley. Now, the site synopsis mentions 2 types of woodlands in the PNHA, wet broadleaved woodland and dry broadleaved woodland. And you can find both of these types in that part of the PNHA that's in the Ballincollig Regional Park. The woodland floor of many Irish broadleaved woodlands is at its most colourful usually in the early spring before the trees put out their leaves to catch the light. Wood anemone is often putting on a show at this time of year, as is another white-flowered species, ramsons, also known as wild garlic, due to the strong-smelling leaves, stems and bulbs. Violets, such as the common dog violet seen here, are out and about in the early spring too, as of course is that other lilac purple flower, the bluebell. Primroses are appearing now, while lesser celandine from the buttercup family forms carpets threaded through the ivy on the woodland ground. In places, if you search among the early spring flowering plants, you can find the delicate fern-like leaves of pignut that will begin to flower later in May and June. Now, these and other woodland floor plant species found growing in some of the drier woodland areas in Ballincollig Regional Park are species found in a semi-natural woodland type called oak ash hazel woodland in a Guide to Habitats in Ireland. A Guide to Habitats in Ireland is free to download from a number of locations online and is a great way to learn about habitats in Ireland. Now, although there are a lot of native species on the woodland floor, there are non-native species in the shrub layer and the canopy, particularly sycamore. And these non-natives can be found in the canopy of the wetter woodlands, even where native species such as meadowsweet, hemlock water dropwort, creeping jenny, opposite-leaved golden saxifrage, and marsh marigold are found on the floor. There's a plant growing on the woodland floor at the southwest end of the Ballincollig Regional Park called garden yellow archangel. This plant is often thrown out of gardens when it starts to take over because it forms dense carpets where nothing else can grow. It would be a shame if this was to smother any more of the native woodland plant species growing in the regional park. Now, as well as woodland, there's also grassland in the proposed natural heritage area, and some of this is of significant nature conservation value. In those grasslands where plants are allowed to grow long through the season and then cut once at the end of the flowering season, a very diverse range of grasses and other flowering plants can be found. This is invaluable for invertebrate species such as bees, butterflies, moths, spiders, and others, as well as the animals that feed on them. Many of the plant species in the grasslands here are relatively common, but it is the sheer number or diversity of plant species that makes these grasslands remarkable. Despite its name, the common spotted orchid is less common than many other species in the grasslands, while sneezewort, which grows here too, is actually quite rare in Cork. Having eyebright species and the related yellow rattle, both of which parasitize grasses, means that overall plant biodiversity in the grasslands can be maintained as long as they're managed appropriately. Species-rich grasslands like this were once much more common in Ireland, but changes in farming practices, particularly haymaking since the 1960s and 1970s, means these are really quite rare now. Keeping some paths mown through the longer grass is probably a good idea as it reduces trampling and can also help some species to produce more flower. The River Lee has a great influence on woodlands and grasslands in the PNHA, and the fish and other aquatic life that it supports are important for mammals such as the otter and a range of bird species. Now, if we zoom out from the regional park and head south a bit, we'll find another proposed natural heritage area, Ballincollig Cave. That's site 001249 on the NPWS list. This PNHA is split over two sites, both of which are on private property. Ballincollig is situated on limestone bedrock. This is not a very common bedrock type in Cork, and part of the reason this was proposed as a natural heritage area is for the limestone-loving plants that had been recorded here. If we leave Ballincollig Cave PNHA and head east, when we get to the Cloisters housing estate, there's a really nice wetland. It's got a diverse range of wetland plants including devil's bit scabious, marsh bedstraw, bladder sedge, water horsetail, bogbean, and the very striking marsh cinquefoil. These species, combined with the other plant species in the open area at the centre of this site, would have it classed as a fen-type habitat in A Guide to Habitats in Ireland. It has some of the characteristic of a rich fen and some of a transition mire, and both of these habitats are similar to habitats listed in the Habitats Directive, a European Union directive that protects habitats and species. While it might be a good thing that there are trees surrounding the fen and keeping it secluded, if too many of them grow out into the fen and take over the open habitat, then the valuable open fen habitat could be lost and replaced with a less valuable wet woodland habitat. Dragonflies and other insects were seen using the fen during fieldwork, as were a heron and a moorhen, and tracks through the fen indicate that a fox is probably using it as well. Older maps and photography seem to suggest that this area wasn't quite so surrounded by trees in the past, and it may have been slightly bigger in the past too. This isn't a proposed natural heritage area, and it doesn't have any other nature conservation designation. In Ireland overall, this kind of habitat is under threat from drainage and through becoming overgrown by trees and scrub. And in Cork, it's not a very common habitat type at all. But surprisingly, a little bit further west in Ballincollig, at the stables, there's another wetland habitat. There's a slightly different mix of plant species over much of this wetland, but again, it was seen to be valuable for insects and birds. And both of these wetlands are private property. Now, there are many other places, habitats, and features of biodiversity value dotted all around Ballincollig. Sometimes these are in places you might not think of. You can read more about these in the Ballincollig Biodiversity Action Plan.